Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Matt Taglia, Senior Director of Emerson College Polling. Matt, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I can't believe I'm finally saying it, but we are in the home stretch here. There's one weekend that separates us between now and Election Day, and there are some new Emerson College polls showing a tight race in some of those key battleground states. Harris is slightly ahead of Trump in Nevada. Trump is up by 1 point in Michigan. Read the tea leaves for us. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that there are only, 4 days left until Election Day. But yeah, so we're getting some late data here out of Nevada and Michigan. So, I think the overall picture is that things have not shifted much. We see Harris is up by 1 in Nevada. We see Trump up by 1 in Michigan. It's very similar to numbers that we've had in September. We are going to be doing one more final round of the 7 swing states. So that's for release on Monday. But looking at these polls, again, not too much has changed in Nevada. I think it's worth looking at the early vote. So Harris is at about 50%, Trump at 47%. That's according to our data. And again, that is a lower sample size. So there is a higher margin of error there. But if I were the Harris campaign, then I would really want to see that number a little bit higher in Nevada. We do see, as we always do, a gender split, 52% of men backing Trump, 52% of women backing Harris. This isn't quite as pronounced as it is in some states where it's more like 55% men for Trump and vice versa. Looking at Michigan, we see that independents are effectively split, 47% for Trump, 45% for Harris. Again, not much change here. It's just a little bit of slippage overall for Harris, I'd say. But we look at that early vote. Again, we see 60% for Harris, 40% for Trump. I think that that's a pretty solid number for Harris. I think she's got to feel pretty good about that heading into Election Day, but realizing that on Election Day, there will be a lot more Republicans voting.
If anyone can look at a calendar, we are now in November. So we are out of October, out of a potential October surprise. Is it normal to see the polls not really moving in the last couple of weeks, maybe month or so until the election?
Yeah, I think, we do. We do tend to see some movement in the final weeks. Normally, we would see movement from undecided mostly to one or the other candidate, barring some major news story, in which case one candidate might lose some support. We saw that in 2016, some point to 2016 at least, with the Comey announcement moving folks away from Hillary Clinton. We haven't really seen that here. I think that the fact that early voting has expanded as much as it has in a lot of these states, and absentee ballots included in that, people are voting earlier, they're making up their minds earlier, and frankly, both candidates are very well known. It's not as if they went through a hard-fought primary. So yeah, I think this is a unique election here. But I think for Harris, she certainly had more to define. And we can see in some of the favorability ratings in these states that she might have a little bit higher ceiling than the top line numbers indicate. But whereas Trump is a complete known commodity, everybody knows who he is, everybody more or less knows what he stands for. So this is a unique election, but yeah, very few undecided here. Folks are have pretty much made up their minds.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit more because as we've talked about in these 7 swing states, they're going to be deciding this election. And as you said, Donald Trump is a known commodity. He was president. You can't talk about an American election in the past decade without bringing up Donald Trump. So there aren't that many undecideds in these 2 states. But so are you saying this is going to come out really to turn out? Are there swing voters? How many independents are there? What's that look like?
Yeah, there certainly are swing voters, independents. As we saw in Michigan, Independents are virtually tied between Trump and Harris. It's a similar story in Nevada, very close between independents. So yeah, there are swing voters out there, and we only get a very small sliver of undecided in our state polling right now. And there's only so much that we can say about that because it's such a small number of folks. There would be an astronomically high margin of error, but that still translates to several thousand votes in these states. So, and looking at the historical elections, 2020, 2016, those elections were decided by less than 50,000 votes across a few different states. So yeah, they are out there. There comes a point where it's just going to be very, very difficult to find exactly who those folks are. The campaigns are going to be trying to target those folks. They are largely, more so younger, lower propensity voters who, don't necessarily vote in midterm elections, and this could be their first time voting in a presidential election. So we can identify folks that way. And in the case of Trump, his sort of bread and butter voters are lower propensity voters. They are by and large white, and they don't hold a college degree. That's capturing those voters who don't necessarily vote in every single election, but will turn out for him. That is part and parcel to his strategy.
And when you're looking at other demographics in these two states, does anything stick out to you? Does anything surprise you when it comes to that data?
There's not a lot that surprises me. I think, in Nevada, I really want to look at the Hispanic vote. That's one that, President Biden was able to capture in 2020 by significant margins. And in this most recent poll, we see Harris winning that group by about the same margin that Biden did in 2020. So roughly 2-1, 66 to 33, around those numbers. And so I think that that's exactly where she needs to be. That's the largest minority group in Nevada. Same goes for places like Arizona, but where that's not necessarily transpiring. So yeah, I think that's a major one. In Michigan, it's a little bit more diffuse. Again, former President Trump is going to be dependent on those white voters there, whereas Harris is going to be dependent on the African American voters and some of the suburban white vote as well. She is doing about as well as Biden did in 2020 with African American voters, but there's a little bit of slippage. So across these demographics, there's just a little bit where she's underperforming where Biden did in 2020. And so that is a concern, especially if she's going to be dependent on some of that vote come actual election day and not just the early vote.
I do now want to move down ballot. The balance of power in the Senate could shift, and there are two critical Senate races in both Michigan and Nevada. Where do they land, and how close are these races?
So these are a little bit less close than the presidential races. In Nevada, we see Rosen is up by 4. I think that is a trend that's held throughout this election cycle. Jackie Rosen has consistently overperformed both Biden and Harris on the ballot. It's looking like she is a likely, she's likely to succeed on election day. Just looking at that trend line, I think that's really good news for her. Looking at Michigan, it's a little bit of the same story. Slotkin is at 48, Rogers at 46, so about a plus 2% lead there. Again, Slotkin has pretty consistently overperformed both Biden and Harris at the top. So I really think that she has the advantage here in Michigan. Again, very competitive. In Michigan especially, that seems to be within the margin of error, within that likelier margin of error. But looking at the trend line, I think I would much rather be Slotkin than Rogers on election day.
You found a national poll 2 weeks ago when we talked a little troubling for Harris. Now there's 1 weekend left for both the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign to leave everything they have on the field. If you're looking at these numbers in these battleground states, and if you're the Harris campaign or the Trump campaign, what are you thinking in this final push to Election Day?
Yeah, at this point, I think if I'm either campaign, I am trying to get every single voter I possibly can on my side out on Election Day, or in the states where there's still ongoing early voting, getting people to show up, getting people to vote early, getting people to get their absentee ballots, making sure that those folks who maybe waited a little bit too late on those ballots, that they're turning them into drop boxes and not necessarily relying on the mail. There's a lot that will go into these final few days, that final push. I think, for Harris, she's really going to have to take a look at these younger voters who, in most states, we've not seen them participating in, sizable numbers in early voting. She's really going to have to take a look at them and make sure that she gets them out on Election Day. She's going to be very dependent upon those 18 to 29 and to an extent those 30 to 39-year-olds, as well as ethnic minorities in these states, especially like Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Black voters in those states are going to be paramount if she's to win. The same goes for Hispanics in Nevada. So really, she has quite a hill to climb here and make sure that she gets these folks out to vote. With Trump, it's a little bit of the same story, but he's more dependent, again, on those lower propensity white voters. He's able to capture those voters unlike any other Republicans on the ballot. And so his task is a little bit easier. It seems like they tend to show up when Trump is on the ballot, and when he's not on the ballot, they stay home. So, I think he's mostly done his job there in energizing those voters, and they're likely to turn out on Election Day.
On Tuesday, if you're one of the campaigns too, you're thinking about math, you're looking at the numbers, because this is a numbers game, and the big number you want is 270 at least, or to surpass it. So there's 6 electoral votes up for grabs in Nevada, 15 in Michigan. When you're looking at these two states, what state is each a must win for?
Well, I think that Trump can sacrifice Nevada. He doesn't necessarily need that to win. Really, either candidate could, theoretically win without Nevada. Michigan is a little bit tougher. I think that Harris really needs to win Michigan if she's going to win the presidency. With Trump, there's probably another path there. But for Harris especially, she needs to win Michigan for sure. And if she doesn't win Nevada, that makes the job a little bit harder. So the math, I think, here is more on Trump's side than it is Harris's. But again, these are toss-ups. They could go either way. But I do think the math kind of benefits Trump there.
So what you're saying is this is a tight race. It's anybody's race, and all eyes are on Tuesday night for sure. Matt Taglia, thank you so much for joining me today, for breaking down the numbers. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brittany.